the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also fulfilling his obligation. Now, in giving zakat, there's another word that is used which is more of a broad word. Zakat is a specific word referring to a specific type of wealth that needs to be given in a specific way to a specific individuals. The more broad word is sadaqah, which is charity. And the reason why this sadaqah is from the root word sidq, because when a person gives, he gives with his purest, and he gives with his purest intention. So Allah Azza wa Jal accepts the sincerity of his heart. So this sadaqah, it refers to zakah and anything else that you give for the cause of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But zakah is more of a specific, and it's given once in a year based on individuals' ability and based on how and when zakah become obligatory upon him. Now, sadaqat are of two types, wajibat and non-wajibat. Wajibat and those which are non-obligated. Obligations, the first is zakah, after that is udhiyah, after that is sadaqatul fitr, and anything that a person needs to give as an expiation of wealth. For example, you have to give kafara for not fasting. You have to give kafara for breaking your oath. These are all sadaqat al-wajiba. They are mandatory to give. However, they are not as mandatory as zakah, because zakah is considered to be obligated, meaning fard. Now, anything else that is given other than zakah is all sadaqah. Sadaqah is a optional thing, and sometimes it becomes mandatory or becomes more heavily that when a person sees a person in difficulty. Of course, maybe the zakah is not obligated at that time, but it is his responsibility to give charity to the individual to help and assist throughout his situation. What is the wisdom behind? Of course, when you have the order of Allah, you don't need a wisdom. Why? Because the hukum of Allah is the wisdom. You're fulfilling his right. But also, scholars have put together through the ahadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what does this zakah give benefit? So first and foremost thing is it to decrease the difference between the wealthy and the rich, right? And those who are not rich. So there is a big difference between those who are rich and those who are not rich. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the obligation of zakah so that those who don't have can be given. And the responsibility of those who have more than they have or more than they need, they are fulfilling that responsibility. And this is a responsibility that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given. The Prophet ﷺ said, any person who dies because of poverty, the person who did not pay zakah of his wealth will be held responsible of this person's life on the day of judgment. Why? Because the obligation that it was given to him he did not fulfill. To protect the wealth from all types of calamities, that's also another wisdom. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man adda zakat malihi faqad dhahaba anhu sharruhu." The person who gives zakat of his wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect the remaining wealth with being lost or wasted. And to purify the heart of a person, when you give charity, your heart gets purified, and you develop the ability of ghina. And ghina means to be pure and to be wealthy from heart, to give in every situation and condition. So when a person starts to take out money for zakat, takes out money for sadaqah, Allah takes him away from bukhl. Allah takes him away from miserliness. And bakhil is someone that is away from Allah, away from Jannah, close to hellfire. And sakhi is a person who is away from hellfire, close to Allah and close to Jannah, inshaAllah. So also zakah is a way to show gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When did zakah become obligatory? There are three different versions that have been documented by the scholars. Number one is before Hijrah, number two is on the second year of Hijrah, and the third opinion is the 9th year of Hijrah. Now the scholars, they put all of these three opinions into consideration. The sadaqah was given the hukum was given before Hijrah. Zakah became obligatory in the second year of Hijrah along with fasting. So zakah, fasting, sadaqatul fitr, they all came together as a hukum of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the second year of Hijrah before the Battle of Badr in the month of Sha'ban, which we are currently in. Now, in the ninth year of Hijrah, the zakah order was given and it was made as a part of a Islamic government collection. That any Islamic government, it is their responsibility to go and collect zakah from people, as Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to appoint people to go and collect zakah from those who had wealth, so on and so forth. So after that obligation, now it has become part of the system as one of the pillars of Islam. Now, if anyone does not pay his zakah, what ruling that this person has been given? So this person is neglecting one of the orders of Allah, which will be all accountable on the day of judgment, and he is living the faridah. In an Islamic government, this person will be put into prison for not paying zakat. This is why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu said, if a person was giving an entire camel during the time of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he denies to give a rope with that camel, I will go in jihad against that person because he is denying to give zakat. So if a person is not giving zakah, in the court of Allah, he is a criminal, as well as if in the Islamic society, Islamic government, he is also considered a crime, like a person who doesn't pay his taxes in the country that we live in, it's a crime, right? If you hide your taxes or if you cheat on your taxes, it's considered a crime. Similarly, zakat will be taken into. Zakat is not a tax. Zakat is for your own purification. It's for your individual. And it's to help those who are in need. And zakah is been obligated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but if a person neglects it, then he will be considering, he will be doing a crime. Now, when it comes to zakah, so this is obligation, warning against who are not fulfilling this obligation. Now we're going into more technicality of zakah. In zakah, when it comes to wealth, the possession are of three types. Whenever you own, there are three types: zakatable, non-zakatable, and non-zakatable beyond basic necessities. So something that is zakatable, something that is not zakatable, and number three is non-zakatable but beyond your basic necessities. So these are the three types of wealth. So what are zakatable? The zakatable items are gold, silver, currency, business goods and stocks in trade, agriculture produce, livestock. All of these are considered to be zakatable assets. Now, when it comes to gold and silver, because zakat is determined based on the value of gold and silver, and then that converts into currency. So if anybody has a currency, any currency that he has, which is equivalent to X amount of silver, then zakat is due. Because the nisab of zakat is not based on money. It's based on gold and silver. And this is something that does not, it's never going to end. The world is never going to get to a point where these two material will not be considered a valuable commodity. It will be considered valuable throughout, and that's why Islam has kept this. It's not based on this currency or that currency. It is based on gold and silver. So in whatever time and era you live in, you will calculate it on the base of what you have, the price of gold and silver. If a person has money equivalent to that or more, then zakat will be due upon him, and otherwise zakat will not be due upon him. What are the nisab? So now this is what you call nisab. Items that you own which are more than your necessity and which are there for growth, then you are considered sahibu nisab. Nisab are two types. The first type of nisab, which makes zakah obligatory upon you. The second type of nisab is the nisab that you have which does not make zakah obligatory upon you. However, you're not able to receive zakat either, right? So one is the nisab in which you have to give zakah. The second type of nisab is that you don't have to give zakah, but at the same time you cannot receive zakah, right? So what is the nisab that you have more than your necessities in the zakatable items? That nisab is the one that will make zakah obligatory upon you. So that is 2.8125 troy ounces, which is 7.5 tola gold, or 19.6875 troy ounces, which is 52.5 tola gold in grams, 3 grams of gold, and 87.46 grams of gold, and 612.36 grams of silver. If you have money equivalent to this, right? So right now in the market, we are somewhere between, when it comes to the ounces of silver, it is mostly measured by ounces. So it is around somewhere between $19 to $20 per ounce, right? Silver. And gold, it is around 19,000 to an ounce. So that is, not 19,000, 1900 to an ounce, whereas silver is, because there is a huge difference between the price of gold and silver. Back in the time of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, there was not much difference between the price of gold and silver. So they used to work out pretty much 3 times the price of silver will be equivalent to the price of gold. But now you have exceeded that limit, because $19 versus $1,900, that's the difference between the price of gold and silver. So now, if you have cash, your cash will be counted as equivalent to silver, not gold. Unless you have gold, then you will take the nisab of gold. Otherwise, in silver, and if you have mix, let's say you have silver, you have gold, you have other items, the majority of the scholars say that you will combine all of them, measure it to the silver, and then after that, if it goes over nisab, you have to give zakat. Otherwise, you don't have to give zakat. Some of the scholars say that the gold can never be added into anything else. The gold will stay on its own, and rest of the items will be added into the pool. If the gold reaches to the area or to the level where zakat is obligatory, then and only zakat of gold will be given. Otherwise, it will all be included into one. So, what is the best opinion? The best opinion is to include everything, right? Because at the end of the day, it is always better to give more than to give less, right? When it comes to zakah, you will always want to go and give more. You don't want to give less. Now, if you were to take today's nisab, so based on our troy ounces is 19.687. So if you were to take that 19 times 19, what will be the math here? Huh? 360. So that's your nisab for currencies, right? $360 or more. So $360 or more, you have more than your necessities of daily life, then that you will have to give 2.5% from that amount. That will be the nisab that you will go around with the currencies, right? So anything that is above that will be zakatable, with the condition that you've owned the amount of nisab for the entire year. Now let's say you became sahibu nisab on January 1st. And then on February 1st, on June 1st, you went back to zero. And then on June 15th, you became sahibu nisab. Then you're going to start again from June 15th. So next year on June 15th, you will have to pay zakah if you did not go down to zero. But if you went down to zero at any given time, you will reset. If you go down to 1, then you're not going to go to reset. So let's say if a person was having $500 in his account the first time he got his wages, after taking care of all the expenses, he remained $500. So that's when he became Sahibun Nisab. Now, out of this $500, he went up and down, up and down, up and down. On December 31st, he is having $800 in his account, which is more than his necessity. So he will pay zakat on January 1st upon $800. Anything that you accumulate, anything that you get, anything that you accumulate throughout the year, it will be added into this. Now, what is not added into that? Right? So, according to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, any business goods or non-business goods, if you receive them throughout the year, at the end of the year, whatever net you have, your zakat will be due on that. Whereas Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah says that only business goods will be added, non-business goods will not be added. Let's say someone gave you a hadiyah of $1,000. So that $1,000 needs to have a zakat of a year before it can be added. So anything that you get throughout the entire year, it will all be added into this. And at the end, even if you got it a day before, let's say for example, December 30th, you had $800 in the same example. And now on December 31st, someone gave you a $1,000 gift, or you got a profit of $1,000. Now on December 31st, you have $1,800. On January 1st, you're going to give zakat based on $1,800. Because anything that you get in the middle will all be added inside. Right? So according to Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah, if someone gave you that gift of $1,000, then you're not going to add that into your January 1st zakat. However, if you have earned it through business by selling a property or whatever, then that will be added into the pool. Okay? So these are just the few things, and then at the end we will give time for Q&A for people who would like to ask their own personal, but we're just going to go through general rulings, and if anything that is not covered in our talk, then we can go for a Q&A, inshallah. Okay. So according to the Sahibu Nisab, the possessor of the Nisab, a person who possesses any or the combination of any of the zakatable assets equivalent to 52.5 tola silver or 7.5 gold, zakat will be upon him, except for debts. Now, what will happen with debts? There are two categories of debts. The first category of debt is long-term loan. The second category is short-term loan. How would you define long-term and short-term? Anything that you have to pay off within a year, it is considered a short-term loan. And anything you have a time to pay off more than a year, then that is considered to be a long-term loan. Okay? This is a criteria of a short-term loan. Some of the fuqaha has mentioned any type of loan which is a necessity loan, it's considered a short-term loan, and anything that is beyond your necessity loan, then that is considered to be a long-term loan. So however you look at it, in short-term loans, you are allowed to deduct the entire amount. And in a long-term loan, you're only allowed to deduct 1 year amount. Okay? So now, let's say if a person is owning a house through an Islamic finance, because remember, between the commercial finance versus Islamic finance, there is a difference how you're going to calculate your zakat. If you're having a commercial loan, then you're not going to add the interest inside. You're only going to take the principals. Whereas in the Islamic zakat, in the Islamic loan, you're going to add the profit. Because in the Islamic loan, that interest turns into a profit. So we're not going to call it interest anymore, it's a profit. So the profit and the principal will be added. For example, if a person is owning a house and his payment is up to 15 years, so he's not going to deduct the entire amount. He's going to only deduct 1 year's payment. So let's say his 1 year payment is $3,000, $30,000. So whatever cash he has, he will take away 30,000, and zakat will be on the remaining. Now, if he is owning the property through a mortgage, commercial mortgage, then from that 30,000, he's going to calculate how much is going to be principal and how much is going to be interest. So let's say 18,000 is principal and the remaining is interest. So then he will only deduct 18,000 because that the remaining is interest, and it's haram to pay interest. So that is why it's not going to be counted as a debt. It's not going to be counted as a loan that you have. So that's how you will calculate. If your 1 year payment, this is what you're going to deduct. Now, some of the scholars say that you will only take away 1 month's payment because that's the month you have to give. The remaining you won't take away. It's like a rent. When you're renting a house, you will only be giving out 1 month's rent. You're going to be deducting from your assets before you calculate your zakat. So now, when it comes to that, if you have a long term, then only 1 year's amount will be deducted. If you have a short term, then the entire amount will be deducted. So let's say if you have 500K in your account, you bought a house for 450K, and that 450K needs to be paid within a year, then you are going to take out from your debt 450K. Zakat will be only due on 50K. So that's how you will divide what you have owned and what you owe and what you don't owe. Now, what are the conditions for a person upon whom zakat is due? Number one, he has to be Muslim. Number two, he has to be in his sanity. He has to have the ownership of nisab, and we've already discussed what is the nisab. And the money has to be away from all types of debts. And the zakat needs to be paid by each earning person. Some of the scholars say it's per household, but that opinion has not been sustained. It's each person who makes money in the house. So if you're a family of 5, 3 people are working, 3 people have to give their zakat. Right? If you are a family of 5, only 1 person is working, that 1 person needs to pay off his zakat. So whoever is earning, whoever is sahibu nisab, that's the person that needs to give zakat. If a person has a lot of wealth, let's say you have a lot of gold, and you give it to your daughter, and your daughter is not baligha yet, she is under maturity. Zakat is not due upon that gold. Why? Because she is the owner and she is not baligha. For zakat to be mandatory, you have to be a mature person, you have to be after puberty. So zakat is only due upon baligh people, not on non-baligh. Okay. So now at the end of the year, at the end of your year, how would you calculate your? So a lot of people, they want to have zakah given in Ramadan. Now, zakat doesn't have to be given in Ramadan. Zakat has to be given at the time when zakat is due. If a person wants to change his due date and take it into Ramadan, then what he needs to do is he needs to do his yearly zakah, and then after that, from that day until Ramadan, whichever day he likes to make that, he will take out the amount. So let's say, for example, in actual terms, his zakah is due on January 1st. Okay? Now, on January 1st, he pays out his zakah. Ramadan does not start till March 23rd. And he decides, okay, I'm going to take out my zakah on the 10th of Ramadan. So that is on the 30th of March. So on the 30th of March, he is going to calculate the amount of wealth that he has from January 1st to the 30th, will give that much, and now his 30th will become the 10th of Ramadan will become his due date. So now his year will start from 10 Ramadan to 10 Ramadan. And then if a person does not do that, then this 3-4 months amount, at one point he will have to give. Probably the next year he will have to calculate another 3 months of wealth, and then after that give zakah in the next year's 10th, on the 10th of Ramadan. So that's how you can change and bring your due date in the month of Ramadan. Is there any significant in paying off in Ramadan? Yes. What is the significant? 70 fara'id. A person who does one faridah in the month of Ramadan, he gets the reward of 70 fara'id. So zakah is a faridah. It's an obligation. So when you give in Ramadan, you get the reward of fulfilling it 70 times versus giving it any other time of the year. So there is a virtue, and that's why people will like to give their zakah in the month of Ramadan. Now, once zakah has become obligatory, this is how you will go about in calculating. The first and foremost thing is zakat is not due on houses which you have purchased and you've put them on rent. Let's say you have few houses, you have put them on rent. Zakah is not, the houses are not zakatable. However, the rent is if it happens to be in your savings at the end of the year. Any property that you've bought with the intention of building house of your own residence, where you're going to live in, that property will not be counted in zakat. No matter if that property stays with you for 10 years, you haven't built houses, you don't have to give zakat on that property. Any property that you've purchased with the intention that you will sell it once the price will go up, every year you will have to take the market price and give zakat on that. So let's say you've bought a plot in Al-Hamra 10 years ago, right? What, 40,000, 50,000? And now what, 130, 150, 200, right? So you bought it with the intention, paise bad jayenge to, cash it off. With that intention you bought that. Once the money will go up, I will sell it off. So at this point, you will have to give zakah on 200K, right? Because now that's the current value. It's not the value that you purchased in. Every year, whatever the current. See, the only plot which is zakatable is that plot which you buy with the intention of reselling after the price goes up, or reselling the plot itself. Even if you made an intention that I will build a house and then sell the house, that plot is not zakatable. Right? Even if that intention that I will build a house and then I will sell the house, that any plot that you construct on it, that plot is not zakatable. Only that plot is zakatable when you are making intention to purchase, and with that intention you are going to sell it as a plot when the price goes up, or however, that plot is considered to be zakatable. Similarly, if you have purchased a house with the intention that you will, or you've purchased a plot with the intention that you're going to build a house on it to live in, or you're going to build a house on it, and then you change your mind. Now that property is not zakatable, because the intention at purchase counts. Whatever intention you have at the time of purchasing that property, that intention will stay with it forever. Now, if your intention changes, your intention can change, but that plot will not be. Unless you sell the plot and then you have the money with you, and then that money can be added into your savings, and then that will go towards zakat. Now, let's say you have retirement funds, 401k, IRA, or any types of retirement funds. Now, there's two opinions to this. Either you can leave it the way it is, don't touch it. When you cash out, as many years the money has sit, just give the zakat on that. Because the retirement funds are yours. It's just due to restrictions, they're not accessible. But at the end of the day, it's your ownership. And that's what makes zakah obligatory on it, because it's your ownership. Now, you can debate that the ownership is not accessible. So it's like a debt that you don't know when you're going to get it back, or even if you will. So that's why the ulama say that you can take it as two opinions. If you can give the zakah at the time when you cash out, at whatever year that would be, or every year you go into your 401k, you look at the entire amount and you say, well, if I were to cash out today, 25% will go towards penalty, another 30% will go towards taxes, I will get 40% in my hand. If I have 100K sitting in my 401k, then zakatable is only 40K. Understand? So that's how you will calculate every year, because that money is eventually yours. Now, if you have given money to someone, you give someone 10,000, you give someone 20,000. Now, this is your money which he has, so you are responsible of that zakah. Now, you know for sure that you will get that money back within a year time, then you will pay zakat of it when you're taking out your zakat. But at that some point you start thinking, okay, maybe this person has gone through a very desperate situation. I don't know if I'm going to get my money back or not. Then you have no zakat on that money. When you get it back, then you give zakat of the year. If you don't get it back, then of course no zakat on it. So that is, and if you have missed a couple of years in the middle, that's fine. Because at the end of the day, you had no expectations that this money will be coming towards you. Anything that you have with you that is used for personal items, like you have cars. If a person has 15 cars, all of them for personal use, no zakat on them. If a person has, let's say, merchandise in the house which are equivalent to X amount of good many items, which is more than his necessities, but they're not zakatable because they're personal items to use. Similarly, there is no zakat on stones. So if you have ruby, silver, ruby, you have diamonds, all of these stones, they're not zakatable. If they go into a jewelry, then that jewelry becomes zakatable. The stone itself is not zakatable. So let's say if you are putting a 2-carat diamond on a 12-carat gold ring. A 12-carat gold ring is no value, right? Very less gold. So that stone will not be zakatable, even though it might be a very precious stone, but it's not zakatable. Only the stones become zakatable when they are used for business. The person is a diamond seller, he has diamonds, so at that time the values will be counted. Now, if a person has a business, at the end, items that will not be taken into zakat: the machineries, any vehicle that is involved in deliveries, all of these items are not considered zakatable. Only the goods and the produces, the product that he has, that is zakatable, with excluding the monies that he owes to people. So let's say if a person has $50,000 inventory in his store, but then for this inventory he owes 40,000 to the vendors. So that means his zakatable item is only 10K. Zakat will be on 10,000. Going down to stocks. A lot of people have stocks. Now there are two categories of stocks. There are the stocks that you invest in. They're your short-term stocks. And then you have long-term stocks that you've purchased and you forgot about it. And when the price goes up, then you will cash out. So this will be treated same way as you have a long-term or a short-term loan that you have money that you have given to someone, in the same manner. If there is stocks that you have on a daily basis, whatever the value of stock is, you will minus 60%. Zakat is only due on 40% of your stocks. Why? Because 30% is considered as buildings and another 30% is considered as machinery. So let's say you are having Apple stocks. So now Apple stocks are based on what? It's not just the product that they're putting into the market. It's their whatever they own. So their buildings, their machineries, whatever is producing those Apple products. That is also part of the stock. So what they do is 60%, 30% goes towards machinery, towards building, 30% goes towards machinery. The remaining 40% is the one that will be zakatable. So if you own $100 Apple stock, your zakatable will be $40. Similarly, you can count on to other stocks. And if you have a long-term stock, then of course that stock will be considered when you cash out. At that time, you will give the value. Some of the scholars say you can give the minus the amount and give it every year so that you don't have to give at the end of the year. Okay. Now, what the ulama have said that the year will be counted as a lunar year, which is considered sana. And some of the scholars say no, it's going to be a Gregorian year, which is going to be hawl. So the difference between that is and this is because every year you're going to reduce 10 days. So every year you are decreasing 10 days if you go through the lunar year versus the solar year, because that's how the days are distributed. So there will be a point that you will come across that in X amount of years you will have certain amount of years zakat remaining. But majority of the scholars say no, we will take the lunar year, and it's best to calculate zakat through a lunar year and not through because it's an Islamic perspective, it's an Islamic obligation. So you will take the lunar year and not the Gregorian year. That's how the zakat will be calculated. So for one example, I will give you on the 10th of Rabiul Awwal, a person had $2,000. Thus he has become Sahib Nisab for the first time throughout the year. This amount kept on increasing. Now on the 9th of Rabiul Awwal, the year later, he owns $6,000. Zakat will be due on 6,000 as we have explained before. The only way, now if the gold is purchased for use, let's say you have jewelry in the house, which is used by the woman of the house. According to Abu Hanifa, those are still zakatable. The only item in the usable contest is considered to be zakatable are the gold. Other than that, gold and silver. Other than that, nothing that you use is considered zakatable. However, Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah says that even gold and silver, if it's for use, then they're not zakatable. Imam Abu Hanifa is taking more of a cautious opinion, and Imam Shafi'i rahimahullah is taking more of a legal opinion. So that's why, ala ikhtilaf al-aqwal, if a person he wants to give, that's the best thing to do. But if a person says, I don't want to give zakat on usable jewelry, then the option is there not to give zakat on gold and silver, which is used, which are there in the house to use. Other than that, if it's for gold, both of the ai say that is considered to be obligation for a person to give zakat on. So inshallah, we will take questions. If anyone has question, they can raise their hand and ask, inshallah. Yes, brother. Yes. So if the wealth is not increasing, the wealth is just there. Let's say someone has something, the wealth is just there, is not increasing, then that's one of the conditions that the scholars say that he doesn't have to give zakah. But if you give zakah, it's always better. So if that money is more than his necessity, because pocket money is a necessity, right? So if it's more than his necessity and more than his needs, then of course that money will be considered as a zakatable money. But if it's not more than his necessity, then it will not, zakat will not be mandatory upon him. So yes, that will be included. Anything that you have to pay off through the at the end of the year, right? So let's say yes, property taxes. Property taxes will be excluded because that's the amount you have to pay by the end of the year, right? So that will not be parted. That will not be included into your savings because you owe that money eventually. Not on the plot. If he's mending and change, yes. So what I mean by property is a plot, right? If you own a plot and if you have intention to build something on it, then it's not zakatable. If you don't have intention to, you just want to sit and later on sell it, then that's zakatable, right? If you are building something on it, then that plot will not be zakatable because it will be considered as a machinery to produce something, and that's why it's not zakatable, basically. Yes. So basically, property tax is it gets accumulated into your debt throughout the entire year, right? So every single day you're living in that house, there is an amount that you gotta pay for it, right? So it's yeah, basically prorated. So now let's say you Ramadan first. Now until the next year Ramadan, on by the January 31st, you got to pay your taxes. So that amount will not be included in your next year's. So for example, on Ramadan 1st, whatever property tax you owe at the end of this year, it will be minused. It will be taken out from your amount, from your savings. And then zakat. So for example, if you have 50K with you and on the first of Ramadan you have $50,000, and roughly about your property tax will be around what, 9,000, let's say, right? So you will take out that 9,000 from your 50,000 and you will pay zakat on the remaining. So no, yes, on the property, on the houses that are on rent, there is no zakat on it. If he has other investing avenues, right? Let's say he's invested in a car dealership. So that car dealership, all the cars are inventory. So that will be zakatable. But the house itself, which is on property that he purchased to put people on rent, that house will not be zakatable. Because the house is a source of generating income. It's not an asset on its own. It's like a machine that produces goods. So there is no zakah on machinery items, right? So over here, when he bought the house to put on rent, now this house is a source of generating income. So the house will not be zakatable. However, the money that is being produced by it, the income, if it happens to stay with him, and at the end of the year, the money is there, the zakat will be given on that. Like that, it will be taken. So that's why the rental properties don't have zakat, because it's considered as machineries. Yes. Hundred grams. Once you pass the mark of nisab, you are from one to the entire amount. This is the amount it will make zakat obligatory, but when you calculate, you will go from one all the way to 100. Yes, brother. No, if you don't have anything left, you have no zakat to pay. Zakat is not on your earning. Zakat is on your savings. If you cash out throughout you go into zero, all your bills paid, everything, you don't have to give zakat. Zakat is never due on earning. It's only on savings. Yes. Correct. So, yes. So to receive zakah conditions, we kind of did not cover that part, but jazakallah khair for reminding me. Um, the eligibility or criteria. So zakat cannot be given to so zakat cannot be given as a wages, number one. Number two, zakat cannot be given to anyone who is malikun nisab, right? Because for zakat to become obligatory upon you, you have to own more than the nisab. But if you are owning up to nisab, then you cannot be the recipient of zakat. And at the same time, you don't have to give zakat. So the nisab is the one. So if someone has that much amount of money that is more than the nisab, then zakat is due upon him. But if a person has a lot of debts, right, then of course you will minus that out. So for example, a person has $1,000 in his account, but he owes $50,000 to someone else, right? Zakat can be given. Zakat can be given to pay off anyone's loan. Al-Gharimin is one of the masarif of zakat. Anyone's loan can be paid off with zakat, as long as you don't give him so much that after paying off his loan, he becomes sahibun nisab. So let's say if a person, he owes someone $1,000 and he doesn't have money to pay, but he's okay, his daily necessities are being fulfilled. Now you go and you give him $1,500, $1,000 for him to pay off his, and then $500 on top. So that $500 will become extra, which will not be allowed for you to give in zakat, because after that he's gone above and he's no longer a recipient of zakat. Zakat. So in zakat, in the recipient section, it has to have a transfer of ownership. What does it mean? That you cannot put a condition of zakat on any type of money. You cannot say to someone, I will give you this much money and you have to buy this. You cannot buy anything else. You cannot put a condition, otherwise your zakat will not count. You cannot even question a person after you have given zakat that why did you spend on this? You cannot do that. Why? Because it was not your wealth. That's why it's the meaning of zakat is transfer of ownership. You don't own that wealth, so you have no right to question about that wealth. You cannot put a question mark. So that's number one. Al-fuqara. Fuqara are those people who have nothing. Al-masakin are those people who have 1 day's provision. Some of the fuqaha have said the fuqara are those who have 1 day's provision, and masakin are those who have nothing. So, fuqara, masakin, amilina alayha. Amilina alayha are those people who have been appointed to go and collect zakah. Now, some of the scholars say that these people needs to be appointed by government, because we talked about in the beginning, it's a government's duty in Islamic government to go and collect zakah. And anybody who has been given that duty to go and collect zakah, it is amilin. These are amilina alayha. They are working. So the wages of these people can be taken care of through zakat money. Now, some of the scholars in the current situation, because you barely have any Islamic government, and you have so many other countries that have charitable organizations that are working to go and help the poor and needy, and these organizations have their own expenses. So some of the scholars have said that these organizations and their amounts that they pay to their employees and so on and so forth can also be considered as amilina alayha. Wallahu a'lam bis-sawab. Right? Allah knows best if it's considered or not, but this is the difference of opinion. What do I take in? My personal view is that whichever organization you are giving zakat to, you should ask them that how much percentage of zakah or money that is received is used for your own organizational expenses. Some say 8%, some say 15%, some say 20%, depending on whatever the expenses are. So what you do is you give that 10%, 8% above your zakat money, so your zakat entire amount is given to that, to the needy and poor. Right? That's what I give the opinion to people whenever they ask me that, shall I give it to this organization or give it to that organization? I personally tell them, well, this is the best way to give, that you give them, or you add your zakah to that percentage. So let's say your zakat is 10, you're giving $1,000 zakah for your whole, whatever you own, $1,000 you're giving zakah. You find out, okay, 8%, so $1,000, you add another 8%, and you give the entire amount as your zakah. That my zakah is, let's say, $1,300 or $1,500, and it's not $1,000. You've added that couple of hundred more to take care of any expenses of the organization that they have. Now, the next category is mu'allafatul qulub. What is mu'allafatul qulub?